This is Joe Smith from the Midwest Football Podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It all helps us grow our show. Look for our full show, too, anywhere you find podcasts. Links below.
They're still weak at the defensive line, but you have those 2 second-round picks and the first pick of the third round, which is essentially a second-round pick at 64. And I think that's where the Bears can get really exciting because they can come back around. They can come back and take, Joe Tippmann or Schmidt out of Minnesota or Wisconsin, one of those centers, and then they still have 2 more picks to grab a defensive end. And this defensive line class is very interesting at the edge defender. It is both weak at the top, where you have Will Anderson, who is the one surefire blue chipper. He would have been the number 1 pick last year's class, a lot of people think. But then you kind of get into this second tier where you have, like, some people consider Tyree Wilson elite, but he's, he didn't really produce. And then you got the undersized pass rushers like Nolan Smith out of Georgia and Will McDonald out of Iowa State. And these guys, really good pass rushers, but they're undersized. So a lot of people might be scared off by them. And then you got your more prototypical power rushers, Miles Murphy out of Clemson, which I've heard could go top 10. Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. He's a big boy. He can get a good power rush in there. And I think that if the Bears, 9th might be a little high for any of these guys, but if they start trading back, they become a possibility, especially if these guys are available in the second round. And then when you get back, you even have like this guy Felix. I just call him FAU. I think he's out of K-State. He's another one of those undersized guys. He's got a really good bend. He can finish, but he's also undersized. And then you got this group of guys who are just okay. They're probably going to be solid NFL guys, but they're not really exciting. They have a high floor, low ceiling types. And I think that's the spot when these guys are going. That's when the Bears should go get an interior lineman and then come back. And now you're back to these, undersized guys or small market guys or these guys who are prospects that are high floor, high risk guys. And I think the Bears are at the position that that's what they should be swinging at in the second and third round, because the Bears aren't a contender yet. And I think that throwing lots of bodies at this position in this spot is a great usage of these tools.
Yeah, I found a depth defensive end from Army named Andre Carter II. And I think he would be, if you can get him for a third round pick for the Bears, I think he might be exactly what you're talking about, because he's playing for Army. So he was not in a football style training regimen. He's 6'7", 260. So you're probably going to have to redshirt the guy. But he tore it up, not this past season, but 2 seasons ago, even at that build against good teams. And then not so much last year because everybody schemed their entire offense to take him away. Some people have him pegged as a pure 3-4 pass rusher. I see a guy who just needs to get with an NFL strength coach year round. Yeah, you might need to redshirt him, but the Bears can do that because they're not planning on competing for a championship this year. They're one of the few teams in a position to be able to just kind of get him in the building and see what he's got.
I 100% agree. That is exactly the type of guys the Bears should redshirt. And I also like a similar vein is a Nick Herbig out of Wisconsin. He is a edge rusher, or maybe he's a linebacker. He's kind of one of those tweener types, kind of like a poor man's Micah Parsons, where I think that's another guy that he could come in as a pass rushing package like Andre Carter on third down when it's time to just go after the quarterback because they're undersized. They might not hold up. But at the same time, Herbig could also be developed into a weapon if the Bears defensive staff is creative enough, where he could be the third linebacker in typical situations where they already have TJ Edwards and Tremont Edmonds that they picked up in the free agency. So there's not a lot of pressure on Herbig to produce as a linebacker. In fact, it takes longer to develop a linebacker. So as a rookie, you could just have him in as a third down pass rusher, and then maybe sophomore, junior year in the pros, he could be that hybrid elite weapon that they could use versatilely. And then other guys I like are like the opposite type of prospect. This guy, Carl Brooks out of Bowling Green, a little action. This dude was the highest pass rushing grade in football. Now, it was against Mac, but still, I mean, he produced. This is the guys you got to take a flyer on in the mid rounds. He could be a fourth round pick. This guy was 300 pounds and he got 69 pressures last year over in the mat and alone. He could be another guy. And also, I like that he is a very different body style as the Andre Carters, as the Herbigs, where you're throwing different styles at these guys. So they might not be Von Miller or Khalil Mack, but as a package, you could throw these guys at them. And I think the Bears should just start hammering the defensive ends with like these guys. Even Zach Harrison out of Ohio State, his biggest knock is that he produced really well as a sophomore and then didn't get better. Well, that's still pretty good. I mean, that's what they said about the Bosa's is they're not going to get any better. But guess what? Coming out of college, they were pretty good. So I think that's where I think as boring as it is as a Bears fan to say, hey, go get a tackle, go get a center / guard, and then just hammer the defensive ends. I don't care. I think that would be the best way for the Bears to develop because then if any of these defensive ends or linemen produce, now in the offseason, you can go get your pass rusher. You can go get a guy in free agency. You can trade for someone. You have an extra first round pick next year. Maybe you get an elite guy out of Carolina or Chicago, or maybe you can trade up to get next year's elite guy. It really turns the Bears into contenders a lot faster if any of these guys hit. And I just think that the ceiling of these guys in the third and fourth round are higher than the guys that are going to go in the second. And I think that's why the Bears are possibly in a great spot to really just go hammer the needs on the line and keep Justin Fields upright and go after the other team's quarterbacks.